Hi, everyone. It's Keisha Zulo, founder of the Women in Business Summit, and I am thrilled to have with us Sabine Gedeon. She is a life and leadership coach, and Sabine has been a speaker at Women in Business Summit before, and I'm so thrilled. She was here last year, and she's back again this year for our summit on July 31st. I'm so excited. Welcome, Sabine. Why don't you introduce yourself? We're going to have a conversation about lots of things, including COVID, the current climate, everything. So why don't you share with our audience who you are, and congratulations on being a new author. That's super exciting.
Thank you. Thank you, Keisha. Thank you so much for having me. Hi, WIB WIB Summit audience. I'm so grateful to be here. Again, as Keisha mentioned, I am Sabine Gedeon. I am a life and leadership coach, and I work with women in leadership, whether that be in the traditional corporate environment or as business owners as well. And I do, most of my focus is really on helping them, get to the place where they can identify the goals that they want or the things that they want to achieve in life. Because I work with ambitious, driven women. I call them type A, and you've heard that term before. But oftentimes we find ourselves, striving to move up the ladder or, striving to be successful only to get there and realize, yeah, this isn't really what I want. So I help those women really clarify what it is that they want, put the strategy in place to get there, and then also to step into that place where they're unapologetic about, who they are and their identity, both from a leadership perspective and a branding perspective. So that's who I work with, and I'm happy to be back this year at the WIB Summit.
Awesome. So we were talking before this, before we decided to go live and record this, about just everything. We talked about how we were doing. We talked about a little bit about COVID, but mostly the social injustice that's been going on. We talked a little bit about economic injustice too, but we're talking mostly about what's been going on with George Floyd. So but before we get into that a little bit, because I do want to talk about how you lead through that, how are you doing with COVID, with your business? How have you been able to, how has it affected you personally and professionally?
Yeah, so that "how are you doing" question is a is an interesting one, right? Over the 9-10 weeks that we've been in this space, that answer certainly has changed. I think I'm now at this place where personally, so from a professional standpoint, I've been doing the coaching, working primarily with private clients and companies, and so at the end of the year, I had gotten this gig, this longer term gig with this company, and so I've been kind of like an in-house employee with them, doing the leadership coaching, and then also to leveraging my my HR background. So when all of this happened, I immediately kicked into, okay, I got to help support, this organization and help them. And so it wasn't until maybe last week or the week before last where kind of like all of the fire started turning to fumes. And so personally, I've been in this place of, okay, I have to restore, right? I have to practice what I preach around self-care, around mental health, coming just off of that. So, right now, personally, I'm in an okay place. Of course, with COVID, on the heels of COVID came, this whole movement, based on Mr. George Floyd's death, and even before that, Ahmaud Arbery. And so it's been a roller coaster, to say the least, from a personal perspective, from a professional perspective, helping leaders within an organization who are first-time leaders navigate, COVID, which is huge,
Right.
and now navigate, what does that mean for them in an organization, and how do they create this inclusive culture? And so I've been in a very active state, from a personal and a professional standpoint, and learning and growing and dealing with my own as the mirror has been brought up in each one of these situations, dealing with my own crap, if you will, in the process.
Because we were talking earlier just about the, like you said, the roller coaster of it all. To start with at the beginning of May, and May coincidentally was a mental health awareness month. And so to start at the beginning of May, um, and then with Ahmaud Arbery, and then you would mention, because Breonna Taylor, I forgot about Breonna because I just went right into George Floyd. And we were talking about just, or for me, it has been a space of, okay, gotta get work done, gotta focus.
Yeah.
And then you're already dealing with the challenges of moving, life being different because of COVID, and then this other piece. And so I love that you're focused on being finding that space to help leaders navigate all of that, because you still have work to get done and you still have to lead, and you empower your customers or your clients to be empowered by their purpose. So what advice, you talked about new leaders and helping leaders navigate the space, what advice would you give them during this time as they lead a diverse workforce?
Yeah, first and foremost, let's give ourselves some grace and some compassion, right? Because for the majority of us, whether you're a first-time leader or whether you've been on this earth for a while, none of us have experienced the multitude of back-to-back trauma that we have in this year. And I don't hear too many people talking about like the whole COVID experience as a traumatic experience, which, as a person who has dealt with actual trauma, from my childhood up, like this has been a traumatic experience. So first and foremost, let's give ourselves the grace and the compassion to acknowledge that and then work through what that means. And then when you add on, this other stuff, right? It's now, okay, people were already in this very like open, wounded, tired, burnt out, fear, anxiety, and now you add on this, right? And so it's almost like, as I was telling you before, like the giant scab that has been, pulled, and now it's just like this gushing wound. And quite frankly, most of us have never dealt with that in our own lives personally, and certainly not from a leadership perspective. Now you gotta, lead 50, 100, 200 people with gushing wounds. And so that's not an easy task. And so one of the things that I focus on is, what I like to call, and I'm not the one that coined it, but self-leadership, right? I'm a firm believer that until you are able to lead yourself, until you are able to, overcome your own challenges, overcome your own barriers, you're going to find it more challenging to be able to do that with and for other people, right? Because leadership doesn't happen when you get the title. I believe in some capacity we're all leaders, right? Whether we're leading our households, whether we're leading, in our professional lives or our personal lives, whatever the case may be, we all have the components to be leaders. And so we can't ignore us in trying to others, right? Everything starts with us. Our mindset, our beliefs, our actions, our behaviors, all of that needs to be checked and needs to be corrected so that, when we're not paying attention, people are watching us. People are modeling, or going to model what they see in us. And if we're out of balance in any area, then guess what? It's going to trickle down to the people that we're called to serve and called to lead. So during this time, it's really just been a focus on getting people to look at them. One, identify where they're hurting, right? I saw fearful leaders, I saw angry leaders, I saw the whole gamut, right? And it's one, identify that this is how I'm feeling, and one, it's okay because I'm human. Two, being vulnerable enough to say, I don't have all the answers. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going to happen next week, without feeling, somehow insecure, or feeling that, people are going to think less of you because you don't have all the answers. Mm-hmm. And then three, just communicating, right? And treating people from the perspective of having empathy and compassion, like we're all in this together, for real.
Yes, I started to take notes, but this is recorded, so I can go back and hear all this amazing stuff that Sabine's saying to me, and to you too. Selfishly, I love that you share for me.
It's just
But I'm
us.
happy she's here sharing with you too. But it's so true that you said work on yourself and give yourself some grace, and know that it's going to be okay, and that it's all right to be figuring it out as you're moving along, but just not be closed down and not have take inaction and communicate. And I love everything that you said about that. I want to switch gears to talk about your book. I'm so excited. Share the title with everyone. What was that process like? What has been, how did you celebrate that? Share that. I'm excited to hear about that whole process for you.
Yeah, thank you. So my book, Transformed: The Journey to Becoming, was released earlier this year. And quite honestly, I don't have the typical process I guess people have, right? I felt led last May to go on an 8-day fast, or initially it was a 7-day fast, just because I just felt like there was something that was about to shift. And like for me, fasting, meaning like no food, is just my way of, cleansing mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally. And so while I was on the fast, I felt led to, start writing this story of mine, or, a condensed version of it. And so I spent 10 days. It took me 10 days to kind of write the foundation of the book itself. And it's really, like, I guess, the version of my memoir, or a small version of my memoir. And it takes the readers through, my journey to becoming who I am today, or who I was at the time of the writing. And I leverage the metaphor of the caterpillar turning into a butterfly throughout the book, as I share instances in my life where, I was in that state. So to give you some background, I'm a firm believer that, all throughout our lives, we're going through that transformation state. While a caterpillar turns into a butterfly one time, we as humans, we're constantly being put in the transformation chamber, whether we realize it or not. And usually it's in the midst of chaotic situations like this, like COVID, or like, what we're seeing throughout here in the US, or it's chaotic situations like losing a job, or, breaking up with someone. Like whenever change is initiated, that's our beginning process into changing and transforming. So in the book, I talk about, some of the key major shifts or transformations that happened in my life, and, give an account to like the trauma that actually, was the catalyst for the change in all of that. And, my hope was to obviously tell my story, but to also, let people know that, no matter what it looks like at the start, or in that dark place, when you're in that dark place and everything that you've known and everything that you believed in has been destroyed, taken away from you, dismantled, much like what happens to the caterpillar, that there is light on the other side of it, right? That the process is meant to not destroy you, but to you and version that you need to be for the next leg of the journey. So that's what I share and
That
talk
gives me
about in the
hope.
book.
That just fills me up, Sabine, because it just lets you know if you're feeling pained right now, just know that a transformation is happening. That is beautiful. How did you
Yeah.
celebrate? Like, what was that feeling like when it was done and packaged and ready?
You asked that question, and the first thought that came to my mind was, I don't think I've celebrated yet. I remember hitting the publish button, because I self-published on Amazon. And it was just like, obviously I had a moment where I cried, and, I thanked God, but like,
Yeah.
it was just kind of like, okay, like I hit the button, it's out there.
Yeah, it's done.
Yeah.
Well, so then we'll have to celebrate virtually for now. Everybody celebrate by purchasing her book on Amazon. I'll
Yes,
include,
please.
I'll include the link so we can help Sabine celebrate. So we touched a little bit on self-care. Before we wrap up the conversation, I have to ask you about that. Like, how have you been able to take care of yourself through all this? And what do you do? Because it's different. I've been asking this question now for a few weeks, and I'm hearing different answers. not the typical like yoga, I do this or do that. So how are you taking care of yourself?
Yeah, so in the beginning of COVID, for me, what self-care meant was not watching TV, I literally deleted I didn't delete my Facebook account, but like I took off the app. It was for me, like with all of the negativity, all of the fear and everything, I knew that because it was such a uncomfortable space to be in, that I needed to go inside of myself, like, and I needed to get clarity from God of like, okay, well, what's happening? Like, how does this apply to me? And so self-care for me was detaching from the world, to be quite honest. And actually, that's exactly what I needed to do, because if in the role that I was playing, or that I have been playing, if I was anxious, if I was fearful, if I was whatever, how can I lead this group of people who are experiencing all of this, from a place of clarity? And so that was phase one for me. And throughout that process too, self-care has been anything from I'm going to do happy hours on Zoom, with my friends, reaching out. Self-care has been pulling out my insanity DVDs and, forcing myself to work out. Self-care has a huge part of self-care for me too, has been, prayer, it has been worship, it has been meditation. It's so easy to get caught up on any given moment, especially in this last week. I found myself slipping down that, where you're so wrapped up in the media and the narrative that they're feeding you over and over and over again, that somehow I'm speaking for myself, you get so sucked into it that you can't even see the truth from what you're being fed. And so for me, I take, these periods of breaks from social media, because that narrative, and I'm not saying it's false, but that narrative isn't necessarily my truth. And being able to recognize that, and being able to, find my center, which is my anchor of who I am as a child of God, who I am as, a light in this world. For me, self-care is focusing on that, and then taking action that aligns with that, versus what's circulating throughout the media in the world.
So smart, and it's intentional is what I'm hearing also. It's not just leaving it up to chance. Sounds
Oh
like
no.
these are the steps I'm going to take. And so I hope everyone's listening to that. So where can everybody connect with you, Sabine? I, of course, will include links and everything, but just would like to, as they're watching, and want to write it down.
Yeah, so obviously you can always connect with me on my website, SabineGedeon.com. I am actually holding a 5-day challenge starting next week, June 8th. So basically the challenge will take place in my Facebook group, Life Coaching for Women in Leadership, I believe that's the name of it. We'll have the links, but the 5-day challenge is focused on conquering your inner critic. And so because I work with ambitious women, and because I work with women who are, always striving, and women period, right? We have that voice that is always saying, you can't do this, or you're not smart enough, or, what are they going to say, right? And so, oftentimes we find ourselves being held back, or falling victim to imposter syndrome, or procrastination, or all that other stuff. And so, the challenge is designed to help you deal with some of that internal mental chatter that may at one point have helped pushed you forward, but now it's holding you back. And so now going back to deal with that, so that when you do set your eyes to achieve a particular goal, you don't have that negative naysayer saying you can't do it. Or if it does say you can't do it, enough to know, yeah, that's not true. I'm pushing forward. So the challenge, again, Conquer Your Inner Critic, starts next Monday, and it's on Facebook as an invite, and we'll include the links.
And yeah, and I'll share that. And I thank you for that, because I know that it's daily work for me. So, and it's something, again, that I'm purposeful about, because there was a study I was listening to that 85% of our thoughts every day is negative. And the only way to combat that is by, having goals, deciding that you're going to every day attack that imposter syndrome. And I love that the 5-day challenge is there, because it's another place that you can remind yourself you can achieve these things. It can be you. Yes, you can be successful even in the time of COVID, you know?
Yeah.
So yes, you can be successful even when you're dealing with social injustice and figuring out how you're going to navigate through that and still show up for both your business and yourself, your community. It's all possible, but it's all intentional work. And I'm so happy that there's a life and leadership coach like you, Sabine, out there in the world, shining your light. I absolutely love talking to you. Thank you so much for your time. She's on the West Coast, I'm on the East Coast, but technology makes it possible for us to share. And I'm so grateful for that. Any final thoughts before we sign off to share with our Web Summit community?
Yeah, so I just want to share, especially in light of everything that's going on, it's weighty. And we were talking about this earlier, right? You know, like there's this expectation, okay, it's Monday or it's today's Tuesday, but like let's go back to work as usual, right? And this is the problem. This is part of the problem, right? We're so quick to rush back to what is our normal, that we often don't give ourselves the time to actually grieve, right? Like I mentioned before, this has been a very traumatic experience from COVID to what we're experiencing right now. You know, you owe it to yourself, or you'd be doing a disservice to yourself if you didn't take the time to grieve, right? Like your normal, your routine, everything about your life that was comfortable, that was safe, that was stable has been pretty much taken away. And then now, you know, you add the social injustice. And so, you know, let's channel that those emotions, but also too, let's be real and let's be honest that we're in a state of mourning and we're in a state of grieving, as a nation, and allowing yourself to go through that process of grieving, right? It's the 5 stages. And also too, recognizing that the stages aren't linear, right? So one day you can be angry, one day there can be bargaining, one day there can be acceptance, and then something happens and you're right back. Give yourself the grace to deal with it, because if you don't, then the next thing that happens is going to trigger and we're back here all over again. So I do see this time period as uncomfortable, as disruptive as it has been an opportunity, or could be an opportunity for us to really heal, as individuals and also as a nation.
Thank you. Well said. All right. There's nothing more that I can say. Thank you, Sabine, so
Thank
much.
you.